Bad it is production, and as of recently, I have been trying to read more. So I would love to impart some wisdom today. And instead of covering a horror movie today, we are covering three poems I would consider to still be horror or horror adjacent, such as the horrors of mortality, death, and hedonism. Some of these poems you need to dig a little deeper to see why they frighten me. Now, stay with me. I think as this channel is about film, creating them, breaking them down, and just loving them altogether, I also think it's important to advocate for more reading and literature as the greats in film all have been well read and well versed in literature. So I want to do my part and talk about some cool poems, all which are within the umbrella of confronting one's mortality in a sense. As poetry is more inclined to be interpretive, this is all subjective and I hope you see where I'm coming from. Let's get to it with the first poem, The Conqueror Worm, by the great Edgar Allan Poe. This poem is about a play. In the first stanza, we learn that the play is described to be packed to the gills with high affluent people dressed to the nines. An orchestra is playing while the actors act. I found it interesting how Poe calls them mimes, as he then describes humanity as puppets created in the form of God's image. The mimes act the play out as something evil and dark haunts them. There is this foreboding presence to it all. In the next stanza, the audience watch the drama that is insinuated to be about humanity itself, as Poe says, with its phantom chased forevermore by a crowd that sees it not, through a circle that ever returneth in to the self same spot. I believe he is saying that humanity is destined to forever have a cyclical nature about us. He gets more specific with the next lines, and much of madness and more of sin and horror the soul of the plot. Poe has such a dark outlook on the human race, and this stanza summarizes it best for me. He believes that humanity is only filled with madness, sin, and horror. The third stanza is where the fun begins, though. As the play goes, there comes a large, blood red thing emerging and it starts to eat the actors. This is the titular conquer worm. I love the detail of its movement. It rides, it rides. I can just imagine the worm twisting and turning while everyone is in chaos. The sight of the worm eating, devouring, destroying is so horrific that it's even made gods and angels cry. In the final stanza, the lights have turned off, the curtains reminiscent of the cloth the one drapes over a coffin has closed. The angels, now pale and poor health, leave, which, as the final line in the poem says, affirms that the play is about tragedy, man, and its hero, the conquering worm. I love the twist of making the worm the hero of the story as he absolutely wrecks the play. Poe doesn't see the point of hope and life as we all have come to terms that no matter what you do in life, death is the ultimate destination. I think this is a great and twisted ending that tells you a lot about Edgar Allan Poe's outlook on life. It's so twisted and just a great poem if you're in the mood for something a little more bleak. The second poem is one of my personal favorites, On Seeing the Elgin Marbles by John Keats. So I'm going to just read this poem and then speak about it as I go, as I can't explain it like I could the Edgar Allan Poe one. At first, it doesn't seem like a horror poem, but it will as I explain it to you. So some context I need to add to this poem is that it was written by John Keats, who was staring at the Elgin marbles, or also a part of the Parthenian sculptures from Athens, which are located in the museum in London. And as he stares at them, this poem is what came about his experience. So let's begin. My spirit is too weak. Mortality weighs heavily on me like unwilling sleep. As John stares at the art, he can't help but feel his own mortality and life hang over his head. And each imagined pinnacle and steep of godlike hardships tells me I must die. He looks at the marbles in awe and can't help but feel little compared to these larger than life battles he is staring at, as these marbles depict mythical wars. Like a sick eagle looking at the sky, yet 'tis a gentle luxury to weep, that I have not the cloudy winds to keep fresh for the opening of the morning's eye. Keats describes his feelings as a sick eagle who can't fly anymore but longs for the sky and is then hit with the reality that it's okay to cry, a reaction that's very necessary. Such dim conceived glories of the brain bring round the heart an undescribable feud. The author is swept away with conflicting emotions as he is both in wonder and disarray while staring at these marbles. So he's in conflict with these two conflicting emotions. So do these wonders a most dizzying pain that mingles Grecian grandeur with the rude wasting of old time, with a billowing mane, a sun, a shadow of a magnitude. These last lines sum up the whole poem. The author watches the marbles who are now themselves falling apart. If something so beautiful and awe-striking can one day become dust, what does that mean when it comes to our own life? One day he will too die and wither away like the art he stares at now. But unlike the art, he will not be remembered for many, many years to come. At least that's what he thinks at this very moment in time. He fights himself internally with this fact, and then the end, a sun, a shadow of a magnitude, which just adds to the idea of time passing. The marbles are far beyond their prime years and are now a shadow of a magnitude. I just find the confrontation of the mortality of mortality so scary? This isn't a horror poem on the surface level, but it is as soon as more is revealed. The last poem I want to talk about is William Blake's The Fly. This poem is an example of the horrors of hedonism. Little fly, thy summer's play, my thoughtless hand has brushed away. Am not I a fly like thee, or art not thou a man like me? For I dance and drink and sing till some blind hand shall brush my wing. If thought is life and strength and breath, and the want of thought is death, then am I a happy fly if I live or if I die? I think this poem is deceptive in its execution. It seems light and airy to the read, but under a more microscopic lens, we can see that Blake compares his life to a fly. And if you know anything about a fly, is that their lifespan is very short. He explained how his thoughtless hand brushes it away, and then later says that he too dances and drinks and sings till some blind hand brushes him away too. Meaning that life doesn't really matter more than a fly bothering you. A fly just lives aimlessly, and so does humanity until you inevitably die. I agree to some extent, as I love this quote that goes, "We have two lives, and the second begins when we realize we only have one." Confusions. Blake believes he should just live almost a hedonistic life to a point where no matter if he lives or dies, he shall do it drinking, singing, and dancing. Lots of people live like this just without a purpose until something like an epiphany happens and we become more than fly. So if I can tell you anything in this video is don't live like a fly. Think and breathe and believe in something. Bad Ideas Production. These have been some of my favorite poems about mortality, life, and death, all within the umbrella of horror.